It started like every other hearing. Coffee brewing, cameras rolling, and Marjorie Taylor Greene loading up on slogans. But by the end of the day, her mic would be cut, her voice silenced, and the most controversial figure in Congress would learn that sometimes even the loudest person in the room can be told to sit down. It was supposed to be just another hearing, the kind where eyes glaze, voices drone, and C-SPAN cameras record what no one watches. Bureaucracy wrapped in protocol. The committee room smelled like burnt coffee, floor wax, and morning tension. Aides shuffled papers. Reporters leaned in, not because they expected news, but because they had nothing better to lean into. Then she walked in, Marjorie Taylor Greene, blonde, brazen, blazered. The self-styled warrior of the right, the queen of confrontation, the microphone's favorite child. She entered not like a lawmaker, but like a celebrity arriving at a rally that had forgotten to start without her. Her heels clicked deliberately across the polished tile, each step louder than the last. She didn't nod to colleagues. She didn't need to. She smiled, tight-lipped, confident, and scanned the room like a performer waiting for her cue. Because that's what it was to her, a stage. The House Oversight Committee wasn't a room of governance. It was a set, a spotlight, a place where facts were optional and drama was currency. And today, she was planning to go viral. She slid into her seat like it was throne adjacent. She didn't flip through the briefing packet, didn't acknowledge the witness, didn't bother with the basics. Her phone was face up, camera app open, perfectly aligned with the edge of her folder. A digital mirror to reflect whatever soundbite she was about to launch. Across the table, the chairperson, Representative Schiff, glanced at her, then looked away without comment. That was new. Usually he offered some kind of warning nod or bracing breath. Today he just noted the time. The hearing hadn't begun yet, but everyone already knew who would try to hijack it. What they didn't know, not yet, was that it wouldn't go the way it always did. Not this time, not today. Because today wasn't just another committee hearing. It was something else, something rare. The day the chamber she thought she owned decided it had heard enough. Before the microphone ever cut off, before the gavel silenced her mid-sentence, and before the vote stripped her of speaking privileges, something had been building. A slow, heavy build, not visible, not tweeted, just pressure. Flashback, a hearing on public health. Greene interrupts the CDC director mid-sentence, accuses him of lying, calls the vaccine rollout a hoax built on needles. Flashback, an education committee session. Greene slams her fist on the table, insists that school library books are Marxist warfare in hardcover. Flashback, a classified military budget discussion. Greene leaks talking points to social media before the meeting adjourns. Each time the room tensed. Each time the chair warned. Each time she smirked and doubled down. The public loved it. Or more precisely, her base did. Every outburst turned into a fundraising email. Every insult was clipped and captioned for Twitter. She wasn't a legislator. She was an algorithm. And Congress, somehow, had let her treat it like a subscription service. But beneath the noise, something was changing. Whispers became murmurs. Murmurs became meetings. Staffers from both parties began comparing notes, not on policy, but on behavior, on disruptions, on procedure violations, on the number of times decorum had been ignored, shredded, tossed like confetti. She's violating House rules of order. She's not even reading the briefings. She's turning hearings into TikToks. Behind closed doors, a phrase started circulating: chronic obstruction. At first, it was just Democrats saying it, unsurprising. But then a few Republicans began echoing it, quietly, nervously, as if speaking the words too loudly might summon a headline. No one wanted a civil war in their own chamber, but no one wanted to keep pretending either. Because there's only so many times you can yell witch hunt into a microphone before the room begins to wonder if the real spell was on the microphone itself. The fuse had been lit long ago. What no one knew was how close the flame had crept. Back in the hearing room, Greene leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, phone angled. The witness, a former defense contractor turned whistleblower, shuffled papers nervously, not because of the questions he expected, but the interruptions he feared. Schiff tapped the gavel once. The room settled, and beneath it all, the scent of scorched patience and political powder. No one noticed the fuse had nearly reached the charge, until Greene lit the match. The witness was mid-sentence, something about contractor non-compliance, missed deadlines, systemic oversight failures, and when it happened, a sigh, then a smirk, then the mic clicked on. "Are we really going to pretend this guy is credible?" Greene snapped. The room didn't flinch. It braced. Schiff lifted his eyes slowly from his notepad. "The witness will continue," he said. But Greene wasn't done, not even close. She leaned forward, voice rising. "This isn't a hearing, it's a Netflix docudrama. We've got fake experts, cherry-picked papers, and a chairman obsessed with slandering real Americans." The witness tried again. "As I was saying—" "Oh, spare us," Greene barked, slicing through his sentence like a blade through parchment. "You worked under Obama's DOD and now suddenly you found your spine? Where was your concern when our troops were stranded in Afghanistan?" A low murmur passed through the gallery. One of the junior staffers reached for their notes. Another looked at the chair. Schiff didn't say anything. Not yet. He just reached calmly for his gavel. "Representative Greene," he said, "you are out of order. The witness has the floor." She laughed. Not a full laugh. Just that sharp, nasal chuckle meant for cameras. "Out of order? Oh, come on. This whole circus is out of order. You bring in a defense contractor who spent more time leaking to MSNBC than actually serving this country, and I'm not allowed to question him." Schiff tapped the gavel again, firmer this time. "Let the record show the witness will continue uninterrupted. Final warning, Congresswoman." But Greene wasn't built for warnings. She was built for clicks. She pointed at the witness. "You're a liar, and you're here because this committee wants a new narrative, one that distracts from the disaster in the White House." "Congresswoman," Schiff said again, this time standing, "if you continue interrupting this proceeding, you will be removed from the speaking roster." Greene stood too, and now it wasn't just volume. It was velocity. "Oh, I see what this is," she shouted. "You're afraid of what I'm saying. You can't handle dissent. You'd rather silence a duly elected representative than let Americans hear the truth." The room didn't erupt. It contracted, like lungs holding breath. Schiff looked to the clerk. "Strike that last statement from the record, and prepare a motion." A ripple of movement passed through the committee table. Eyes darted. Phones buzzed. A Republican 2 seats down from Greene looked at his shoes. A motion, not a recess, not a warning, not a time out. A motion to remove her from speaking authority, to ban her from the microphone. Greene's voice kept coming, fast, sharp, unrelenting. But something had changed. It was no longer being recorded. The room had seen chaos before. Partisan jabs, procedural delays, even walkouts. But this wasn't that. This wasn't noise. This was action. The motion hit the floor with the weight of a decade's worth of swallowed patience. Introduced calmly, seconded almost instantly. A roll call vote, not symbolic, not rhetorical, binding. The clerk began reading names. Some responded with certainty. Others hesitated, their voices quiet, unsure, heavy with consequence. "Representative Johnson." "Aye." "Representative Nguyen." "Aye." "Representative Cortez." "Aye." Representative McMillian. A pause. A sigh. Aye. Greene's eyes narrowed. You're cowards, she hissed. Every one of you. Spineless cowards. Letting the deep state dictate who gets to speak. Schiff didn't look up. He let the vote play out like a metronome ticking toward silence. Representative Greene? She didn't hesitate. Hell no! But the tally didn't care. The final count. 17 in favor, 8 opposed, 1 abstention. Motion passed. Greene looked stunned, not at the result, but at the reality of it. Her mic was still on, but the switchboard operator had already muted her channel. Her voice was live, but nowhere. She tapped the base of the microphone. Once, twice. No echo, no feedback, no power. A courtroom full of eyes turned to her, not in anger, not even in disdain, just stillness. Like something ancient had just ended, and maybe it had. Across the aisle, a Democrat scribbled a note. She's done. Not politically, not forever. But in that room, in that moment, her voice had been turned off. Formally, legally, permanently, if the committee chose. Greene looked at Schiff. For the first time all day, she didn't speak. He nodded to the witness. You may proceed. And just like that, the room moved on without her. She sat there, jaw clenched, hands fidgeting, staring at a microphone that no longer listened. And for a woman who built her career on volume, the silence was louder than any speech she'd ever given. The sound of democracy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Mechanical. A list of names read in a monotone voice, one by one, as tension simmers beneath fluorescent lights. But on this day, each name felt like a detonation. By the time the vote to strip Marjorie Taylor Greene of her speaking privileges passed, there wasn't celebration. There wasn't outrage. There was only something rarer. Finality. She didn't shout anymore, not because she'd given up, but because her voice didn't carry anymore. The mic was off, not metaphorically, literally, disconnected, muted at the console by the committee's vote. Greene sat still, like a statue in the middle of a storm she once commanded. To her right, a freshman Republican from Texas wouldn't meet her eyes. To her left, an older Democrat quietly slid her phone out to check the live feed. Already, social media was ablaze. A C-SPAN producer leaned toward the camera operator. "Stay on her face," he whispered. They didn't need a script. The story was writing itself. Across the country, screens flickered with the image of a congresswoman known for chaos, now caught in the quietest moment of her political life. There were no walkouts, no protest signs, no chants. Only the low hum of forced air through ceiling vents and the slight tap of the gavel, a punctuation mark that said enough. Greene turned to Schiff, eyes narrow, face hard. But there was something different now. The defiance was still there. But it wasn't commanding anymore. It was stranded. She mouthed something. The camera didn't catch it. The mic wouldn't have carried it even if it had. The hearing moved forward. The witness resumed. Members took turns asking questions. The process, that same process Greene had long dismissed as theater, was still functioning. Only now she wasn't part of the cast. At one point, she reached forward as if to press her mic button again. It blinked red, dead. A staffer beside her leaned in, whispered something. She didn't nod. She didn't blink, just stared straight ahead, like someone who realized, maybe for the first time, that volume isn't the same as power. And silence, when imposed by others, can be far louder than any speech. It was the freeze frame that broke the internet. The shot was simple. Marjorie Taylor Greene, seated at a long committee table, face stiff, mouth slightly open, staring into nothing. The glow of a muted mic reflecting off her blazer button. There was no chyron screaming breaking. There was no commentator narrating over it. It didn't need any of that, just her face. caught between fury and realization. Just her hand, hovering near a microphone that no longer listened, just that silence, so sharp it felt like a blade. CNN replayed the clip 7 times before the commercial break. MSNBC slowed it down, zoomed in on her jaw clench, on the subtle shift in her fingers, on the way her mouth tried to form words that never made deadwood into air. Fox News went to weather, but it didn't matter. The clip detonated across social media like a pressure bomb. Compressed outrage released in a half-second of silence. TikToks remixed it with dramatic music. Twitter turned it into a GIF captioned, "When your mic finally gets tired of the lies." Even the late-night hosts didn't joke. They didn't have to, because the punchline was already delivered by Congress. And the punchline was silence. Greene's comms team tried to recover, leaked a quote to Breitbart, calling the vote an attack on the American people, called Schiff a dictator with a gavel, and insisted her mic was shut off to silence truth. But the footage said something different, because what people saw wasn't a victim. It wasn't a fighter. It was a woman who'd shouted over witnesses, interrupted colleagues, berated staffers, and turned hearings into hashtags. Finally being told, no, not by hecklers, not by critics, by Congress. And for once, the rules weren't optional. The volume didn't matter. She could mouth the words. She could flail her hands. She could stew in silence. But the soundboard stayed dark. The microphone stayed mute. And the chamber she once used as her stage no longer had a spotlight for her. It wasn't her voice that people would remember. It was the absence of it. She didn't leave the room, not right away. She stayed half-seated, half-postured, a figure frozen in a posture that was once dominance, and now resembled something closer to disorientation. Marjorie Taylor Greene had built a career on never backing down. She'd faced protests, criticism, even formal rebukes, but none of that had ever taken her voice. Not like this. She sat in the middle of a hearing that continued without her, a strange kind of purgatory. Her body was there, her nameplate remained, but her presence had shifted. She wasn't part of the dialogue. She wasn't shaping the narrative. She wasn't even being addressed. She had become, for the first time, irrelevant in real time. Schiff didn't look at her. No one did. Not to scorn, not to gloat. They simply carried on, like the show had always gone on, and she had simply never been the star. One Democrat questioned the witness about internal contractor memos. Another pulled up ethics documentation. A Republican asked a procedural question about defense procurement. Nothing explosive, just governance. And Greene sat there like she had stumbled into the wrong scene. The mic in front of her remained lifeless, a sleek cylinder of muted consequence. Her finger hovered over the button again at one point, as if testing if someone had turned it back on out of pity. They hadn't. No whispers, no rebuke, just procedure humming forward. The irony was bitter. She had once accused this body of being fake, of being a circus, but here it was, still spinning without her. It didn't fall apart. It didn't freeze. It didn't even stall. She hadn't broken the machine. She had been removed from it. And now, without a spotlight or soundboard, she wasn't the disruptor. She wasn't the resistance. She was background. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, but the performance was over. The energy that once filled her outbursts like gasoline had nowhere to burn. And so she sat. Not collapsed physically, but something in her, the performance engine, the fire that fed on attention to IE, had gone quiet. And the silence wasn't a pause, it was a finish. It took less than 5 minutes to hit Twitter, 30 seconds to hit TikTok. By the hour's end, it was on YouTube, CNN, MSNBC, and yes, even tucked awkwardly into a silent 15-second spot on Fox News, with no commentary, just the moment. The still shot, the blinking red mic, the unfocused eyes, the parting lips trying to summon words, and the complete absence of sound. No chyron needed. The image said it all. The hashtags hit fast. Hash muted Marjorie, hash mic down Greene, hash Congress had enough, hash greened out. The moment wasn't just viral. It was iconic. 1,000 remixes were uploaded in a single evening. Some layered her image with dramatic orchestral swells. Others looped the mic blink over and over. Late-night talk shows didn't even try to satirize it. They just played it, raw, uninterrupted. Trevor Noah: "That's not a mic cut. That's divine intervention." Stephen Colbert: "For the first time in recorded history, silence got a standing ovation." Twitter memes exploded: "When your lies exceed your mic's weight limit." POV: "The Wi-Fi cutout on your nonsense." Her mic: "We don't do conspiracy here." But beneath the humor, something was shifting. Reporters began questioning if this would be a one-off punishment or the beginning of more serious rule enforcement. Republican leadership said nothing. No defense, no condemnation, just nothing. A few conservative pundits tried to pivot. This is cancel culture. But even their tone lacked conviction, because what everyone saw wasn't censorship. It wasn't a debate. It was procedure. It was Congress finally saying no, not to a policy, not to a party, but to a performance. And the clip, more than any slogan, revealed what was really collapsing. Not just Greene's control of the conversation, but the illusion that outrage alone was power. She had mistaken attention for invincibility, and the internet, once her amplifier, had become her mirror. And in it, America saw not a rebel, but a woman silenced not by enemies, but by rules she never thought would apply to her. She didn't post that night. No all-caps rant on Truth Social. No live stream from the Capitol steps. No blurry vertical video with patriotic music and indignation in her voice. Just nothing. And in that silence, something deeper began to shift. Greene's absence wasn't just tactical. It was noticeable. And not in the way she was used to. She didn't storm out of the chamber. She didn't rally a crowd on the front lawn. She didn't turn the censure into a megaphone. She disappeared. The next morning, reporters waited outside her office. The door stayed shut. Her social media team went dark. No memes, no quotes, no victim framing. By the end of the week, her name was quietly removed from the Oversight Committee's speaking schedule. Not suspended, not protested, just deleted. A few allies in the GOP tried to revive her flame. "She was railroaded," one tweeted. "Schiff overstepped," said another. But the energy wasn't there. The outrage wasn't viral this time. It was tired, formulaic, because the country had already moved on, not with malice, but with finality. The base that once amplified her every word was strangely quiet, not because they no longer supported her, but because without her voice there was nothing to echo. The fury engine had stalled. By week's end, she missed a rally in Georgia. No official reason. Her staff offered a vague statement. Congresswoman Greene is focusing on legislative priorities. But no one believed it. She had been silenced on the one platform she couldn't hack, the official record. And without that, the rest of the machine sputtered. She tried once, briefly, to post a message. Just one line. "They may have cut my mic, but they won't cut my fire." It got 40,000 likes, but it didn't trend. The moment was too big, too real, too final. It wasn't just a mic that had been cut. It was the entire illusion of consequence-free chaos. And America had finally stopped watching the show. 2 weeks later, the hearing room looked the same. Same fluorescent lights, same burnt coffee smell, same slow shuffle of staffers preparing for another round of questions. The only thing missing was the noise. Her nameplate had been removed, not ceremoniously, just unbolted. replaced with a generic plastic tag reading "Reserved." No one talked about it, no one joked. It was as if the room had undergone a quiet exorcism, not of a person, but of a presence. Schiff took his seat like always, adjusted his papers, tapped the gavel once. "The committee will come to order." No one interrupted. No one shouted. No slogans. No filibusters of fury. The silence wasn't awkward. It was efficient. It was earned. Because something had changed, not just in the process, but in the power dynamics. The loudest voice in the room had been muted, and the echo of that moment still lingered, not in headlines, not in partisan spin, but in how people now viewed the chamber itself. For years, hearings had been reduced to sound bites and sideshows. Greene had perfected it, weaponized it, profited from it. But in silencing her mic, Congress had done something deeper. It had reminded the country that governance isn't volume. It's voice. That truth isn't measured by decibels, but by discipline. And that sometimes the most powerful sound in democracy isn't a gavel or a scream. It's the dead click of a microphone going silent. Because the rules, at last, have something to say. No one declared victory. No one threw a party. Because real accountability doesn't need confetti. It just needs follow-through. And for once, just once, the follow-through landed. The final image wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet. A room moving forward, a nameplate missing, and a mic still turned off.